in universities, and even in public schools, I think to some degree, there is a reluctance to take a strong and independent position as a cowboy would. Is that right, Lowell? There's a reluctance to do that. And I think it's in part the way we govern. And as a consequence, what habits do we get into? We get into habits of maybe delaying decisions. I will give you my favorite example. Over 2 administrations, we spent 2.5 years trying to determine whether to put HRTM in Albuquerque. Over 2 administrations. And we pretty much delayed it to death. And that's pretty common. You only lasted, your delay was only 7 months. The rest of the delay was, but it is pretty common. It's pretty common that we don't live with courage every day, and the way we overcome that, Bernadette, the way we overcome it is we put it off. And we put it off. Or we go to the next best alternative, and that's to form a committee to think about it. And then we ask the committee to come back 2 or 3 years later. And in between, it's either died or the committee died. But what happens is we don't live every day with courage in a university. And we may be coming to the time that we're going to have to do better than that, because it sometimes is very inefficient and occasionally ineffective when we don't live every day with courage. So that's the point I wanted to belabor for a moment. Go to the next one. By the way, have you met Gina Bermudez, who's administrative assistant? Many of you have seen her before around here. By the way, on the prior point, I was talking to the RILA students the other day, the Rotary group, and I was trying to tell them, and I use these homilies from time to time, and one of my favorite ones is, you can't lead a cavalry charge if you think you look funny on a horse. You can't lead a cavalry charge if you look funny on a horse. If you don't have the confidence to do what you need to do, you look funny on a horse. And I'm talking as a dean, I'm talking about department heads, I'm talking about provosts and presidents, I'm talking about regents. And we all love our regents. Get that out. We love our regents. I can even name them and tell you, I love every one of them.
Is that called looking over your shoulder?
Yeah, that's looking over my shoulder. You got it. Well, you got it. That's good. But what we do though, is we don't have, as a rule, a mechanism to take those kind of courageous stands. And I say even the regents worry a lot about things. I'll give you an example, tuition increases. I mean, we sweat tuition increases like it's probably the worst thing that's ever going to happen to anybody anywhere. But if you look at what it costs us, what it costs to go to New Mexico State as an in-state student, and you compare it to nearly anywhere else, UNM's in the same boat, same pickle. And then we sit and sweat bullets over a 2, 3, 4, 5% increase. And I know it's hard on students. But if you look at the outcomes of after they graduate and the kind of money they can make, and you look at the fact that occasionally some of them drive a better car than you do and worry about a $500 increase in tuition, I think the regents worry too much about that. I think there's reason to believe that we could operate every day with courage. Take pride in your work. That's probably one of the things that the Cowboys oftentimes worried a lot about. And you should know about Cowboys, and I'm not a cowboy. I think Jeff's probably our nearest cowboy around here. But Jeff will tell you, Cowboys prefer to work on horseback. Our cowgirl over here, they prefer to be on horseback. When you get them off a horseback and you hand them a shovel, this is pretty bad stuff. We're actually going to have to do something physical instead of hang on to old paint and just kind of ride around the range. So they hate to do that, and they work in the saddle, but when they're not in the saddle, they have to do some hard labor. So I'm going to show you a poem from this book. It's about an old cowboy. It's about an old cowboy. Go ahead and wait, hold it just a second. It's about an old cowboy who's witnessing this young cowboy who's supposed to be building a fence. And this young cowboy would rather be horseback. And he doesn't like building a fence, and he's not doing a very good job of building a fence. And this old cowboy remembers when he was in that young cowboy's shoes. He remembers this. And he remembers an old cowboy then named Shorty. Shorty told him about how to do the job as best you can. The poem is rather long, but I think it's one of the things, it captures the moment that you've got to do the best you can. So why don't we go with the poem? And half the poem's gone, but it says, the boss expects a job well done from every man he's hired. He'll let you slide by once or twice. The provost won't, but the boss will. Then one day you'll get fired. If you're not proud of what you do, you don't amount to much. You'll bounce around from job to job, just slightly out of touch. Come morning, let's redig those holes and get that fence in line. And you and I will save 2 jobs, those being yours and mine. And someday you'll come riding through and look across this land and see a fence that's laid out and know you had a hand in something that's withstood the years, then proud and free from guilt. You'll smile and say, boys, that's the fence that me and Shorty built. And when you think about it, when we come back here as retirees, as pioneers, the pioneers come back here, we want to be able to say, that's the fence that me and Shorty built. We were part of building the excellence of New Mexico State University. That was our deal. We didn't slide by. We didn't cut corners. We didn't make a crooked fence. We didn't make a fence that wasn't taut. By the way, if you've ever worked with barbed wire, it's not easy to work with, right, Jeff? But if you see a good fence, well, we thought you were trying to commit suicide when you did that. But when you see a fence that's built by somebody with pride, it's a very straight line, and the wire's very tight, isn't it? And they know how to do that. It's not a sloppy fence. It does the job. When we leave New Mexico State University and we ride back across this land and we look out there, we want to say that's the fence that we built. Okay? Always finish what you start. Cowboys hated quitters, and they also hated whiners and complainers. And he references in his book Red River, the movie Red River with John Wayne. And many of you have seen it many times, but it's about John Wayne's going to drive his cattle to Missouri because there's no market and his ranch is going broke. And so they sign up for the drive, and everybody is expected, and John Wayne tells them, every man you sign up for the drive agrees to finish it, no quitting whatsoever. And part of the heart of that movie is some of them did quit and got shot, as I recall. But I'll see it again next month and then I'll remember it. But you gotta finish what you start. And oftentimes at our universities, I wish we would finish more of what we start. We let a lot of good ideas go by. Somebody comes in and they've just come from a conference in St. Louis and says, I had a great idea. I heard this great idea. And the provost, she's never found an idea she didn't like. And she says, well, we ought to try that. You know, that'd be a good thing to do. Put that on the agenda, and we never hear from the idea again. So as a consequence, I don't know that we always agree to do some things, but we never oftentimes finish what we start. Now, one of the solutions to that is don't start so much. Now, the Cowboys would say on this, though, when you're riding through hell, just keep riding. And so sometimes we don't finish what we start because it's difficult. We're riding through hell, just keep riding, okay? Do what has to be done, do the right thing, even and especially when the odds are stacked against you. And that's always difficult for all of us in all walks of life. When the odds are stacked against us, it's also oftentimes easy to capitulate, isn't it? It's easy to take the easy route. I happen to have done time in politics. And I can tell you that the essence of politics is occasionally you're challenged. Your principles are challenged. Let's take our current governor. Our current governor does not want to raise taxes. And I think she's going to hold fast on that. Our current Congress of the United States, not the Senate, but our current Congress of the United States does not want to raise taxes. That's our principle. And times are going to be tough. And so you have to do what has to be done. But at some time, I'm going to posit to you that occasionally you're going to have to modify your behavior. You're going to have to accept that the other side has a point of view. So you have to do what